Am I audible? Dr. Bhattacharya?
Yes, you're audible. Yes.
Great. So good evening to everyone, and yet another very innovative webinar from Calcutta Business School. This is Chandrajit Mitra welcoming all of you on behalf of Calcutta Business School this evening. And let me especially welcome our very honorable and respected speaker, Mr. Dhruva Mukherjee, CEO, ABP Limited. Along with, let me also extend a very warm welcome to Mr. Saurabh Ghosh, who is the Senior Advisor of the Shaitan Group, Mr. Brutati Bhattacharya, Secretary General of the Group, Professor Shumon Don, Principal in Charge for Calcutta Business School, our very honorable moderator, Dr. P.R. Bhattacharya, Senior Professor of Calcutta Business School, students, and every other ladies and gentlemen. Once again, welcome to a very interesting webinar of Calcutta Business School. But before that, let me run you through a small introduction of Calcutta Business School, which is under the Shaitan Foundation, which is the apex body and establishes, administers, and manages institutions like Marwari Balika Vidyalaya, which was established in 1920, followed by Sri Shaitan School, which was established in 1954, and then the Shaitan College in 1955, and last but not the least, Calcutta Business School, 2008. Establishment time. Trustees of the society started a residential management institution styled as Calcutta Business School under the stewardship of Mr. S.K. Birla, who is also the president of the society, Shaitan Foundation, and there are also other eminent industrialists very closely associated as trustees like Mr. Siddharth Birla, the vice president of the trust, and a few other eminent trustees like Mr. G.K. Shaitan, Mr. G.P. Goenka, Mr. R.S. Goenka, Mr. Arun Saraf, Mr. Pawan Poddar, Mr. Raghu Reddy from corporates like Duncan Group, the Shaitan Group, Rasoi Group, Usha Martin Group, Imami Group, the Hayat Group, and the Poddar Group. Well, Calcutta Business School is one of the top AICTE approved autonomous management institute in the Eastern region. It has established itself in 2008, which offers a 2-year full-time postgraduate management and management development programs. This business school, modeled on the top-ranking business schools of the country, located in a sprawling 15-acre residential, eco-friendly, smart campus on the outskirts of Kolkata. Several activities are being conducted throughout the year, which transform and empower the students. Our Mrs. Brutati Bhattacharya is the First Lady Secretary General of, and Sri Saurabh Ghosh is the advisor of the group, while Mr. G.K. Shaitan is the chairman of the core committee of CBS. And the journey continues as we march together to empower and transform all our resources. Let me also take you all through a very brief video which depicts the germination of Calcutta Business School and the Shaitan group as a whole. And I would request our very close Mr. Sunil to run this small video for all of us.
If excelling is your essence, then you are welcome to Calcutta Business School. Center of Excellence, centered on excellence.
It all started in the year 1920 when some eminent industrialists of Kolkata founded the Marwari Balika Vidyalaya. Later, in 1954, Sri Shaitan School was founded, and in 1955, Sri Shaitan College came into being with the objective of further propagating quality education to girls. All these institutions have continued to excel under the management of the Shaitan Foundation.
It has been guided by industrialists like President Mr. S.K. Birla, Director Emeritus, Birla Brothers Private Limited, Mr. Siddharth Birla, Vice President, Mr. G.K. Shaitan, Trustee and President of Shaitan College, Mr. R.S. Goenka, Trustee and MD of Imami Group, and many other reputed industrialists. The Secretary General of the Foundation is Mrs. Brutati Bhattacharya.
Greetings. I would like to speak a few words about our institution, the Shaitan Foundation. The year was 1920, when some of my forefathers thought that female education needed to be propagated much more actively. than was the custom in those days. And we donated from our family 2 buildings in the heart of Bada Bazaar for the girl child to be educated there. That institution is still working. The latest addition to our bouquet of institutions has been the Calcutta Business School, which was started a few years ago on a 15-acre plot of land and not very far away from IIM Calcutta.
Calcutta Business School offers an AICTE approved, autonomous, 2-year full-time residential program on postgraduate diploma in management, majoring in subjects like finance, marketing, IT, operations and human resource. But it's the unique cluster of courses that sets it apart. Interactive and intuitive games like management game and stock market simulation game. It also puts heavy emphasis on data handling and business analytics and uses databases and software like CMIE Prowess, MetaStock, R, and SAP.
Kolkata is the city of joy. It is the cultural capital of India, a city which has its soulful embodiment of culture, love, mystery, respect and enthusiasm. A city that upholds a perfect juxtaposition between the old world and the modern one. It has given us many Nobel laureates over the years. It has iconic institutes like the Calcutta University, the National Library, Presidency University, Bishwa Bharati, IIM Calcutta, and many such legendary institutes. Calcutta Business School's AICTE approved PGDM program is carrying forward this rich legacy of Kolkata.
So welcome back. And once again, I extend a very warm welcome to our very respected speaker for the day, Mr. Dhruva Mukherjee, and also our moderator, Dr. Pinaki Ranjan Bhattacharya. And I hand over this session to Dr. Bhattacharya to take this forward and make this session a very, very successful and interesting one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mitra. Thank you, Mr. Mukherjee, for joining this webinar. Thanks to all the participants who have already logged in and have yet to log in here. Mr. Mukherjee, the first thing I would like to ask you after extending my heartfelt thanks to you is the topic which you have chosen today is Lives of Our Brand. Now, in this present context, why you have chosen this particular topic? If you just brief us about that.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Bhattacharya, for the question, and thank you, Chandrajit, for the welcome. Also, a big thank you to Ma'am Bhattacharya and all the authorities of Calcutta Business School for having me here. It's always an honor and pleasure to be a part of a webinar like this, where we get to interact with a lot of young and bright minds. And also this last 1 year, our interactions have gone down in the social circle in a very big way. So this webinar creates another wonderful forum to re-engage, if I may put it that way. So yes, I know that way Dr. Bhattacharya, the topic is framed, it's a bit of an intrigue. I mean, those of you who are movie buffs may think that, I have taken inspiration from Life of Pi or Life in a Metro, I don't know. But there was nothing like that. The way, when I was reflecting on what to say, and I think there is no denying the fact that all of us have been deeply touched and to some extent shaken by the events of the last 1 year, which is almost a once in a lifetime kind of event that this world has seen. And one debate that we have willy-nilly be a part of, wittingly or unwittingly, is this debate about lives and livelihood. And when we reflect on that from a societal angle, that's one thing. And I was just thinking that in a very small way, this is also a very pertinent debate which we as corporate professionals go through on a day-to-day basis in our organizations, where we constantly debate the concept of life of a brand and livelihood of an organization. And hence the similarities were a bit too, I would say, similarities were a little uncanny in a way, because if you look at it, in the last 1 year, initially at a very defensive level, all of us started taking actions to prevent ourselves from catching the virus, whether wearing gloves, wearing masks, sanitizing our hands, or physical distancing, and so on and so forth. Similarly, in organizations also, most of the time we take a lot of defensive actions to protect the brand that we have from the contextual complexities that tend to attack brands and from external threats that come from time to time. And also now, if you see, proactively we are taking guard by trying to go for vaccination and hoping that we'll be immune against virus. And similarly, in organization also, we take a lot of proactive actions to kind of protect and ensure the perpetuity of brand to some way. And despite all that, we know that there are brands like human beings who have comorbidities. And despite whatever you do, when you get attacked, those brands are the fastest to die. And then there are also healthy brands, which despite everything and all kind of interventions still don't make it beyond a point of time because their ability to fight or their immune systems are very low. So keeping all this context, I thought, I don't want to make this a very morbid kind of a webinar. I'm not talking of COVID or COVID-19 out here, but in a very dark way, there are a lot of similarities in our corporate life and in our right now individual lives and the way we live in the world. And I thought life of a brand may be an interesting topic to dwell upon. Also, what is also very intriguing to me as a management professional is, management science has advanced a lot over the last many years, and yet with the best of brands, with the best of minds, with the best of management science and theories floating around and practitioners around, still very few brands seem to have a lifespan which is about 30 to 40 years. And there are few brands which are great brands, which are there for more than 100 years. We just now heard your brand is one, which started in 1920 and surviving for more than 100 years. It's also an honor. I work for a brand, a media house, which started in 1922, and we are completing 100 years this year. So it's been there are brands like Tata's and who've been there for a long time. We know all about those brands. But most of the brands, and with your permission, Dr. Bhattacharya, I'd like to launch into the main part of this webinar where I'd like to share a few thoughts on this topic, life of brand. Is when I was looking at some data to understand, I was trying to actually define what is an average lifespan of a brand. And I was a little confused because the data points are all very different. I'm usually not a PowerPoint person because I think too many slides, makes us slide in despair. But what I'll do is I'll just share a few slides out here because had it been a real life classroom situation, it would have been easy for me to interact personally. But since I don't have that facility out here, probably, and I can't use the whiteboard or a drawing board, I'll just use the slides as a pointer so that I can, buttress the point I'm trying to make. So I'll just do a quick slide share, and that will probably, so I have in total 10 slides, but I'll come out of it. Yeah, so I present to you, a list of companies, and I'm looking at the Fortune 500 list of 1955 and the Fortune 500 list of 2017. Out of the 500 companies, these are the 60 companies. This is, of course, the global list. These are the 60 companies which are still there. The rest 440 have disappeared. So that's like barely 12% of the companies over a span of 60 years have disappeared from this list, and most of them have disappeared from the face of earth. So pretty much, if you were a brand who was existing in 1950s, moving into 2000, your lifespan was 60 years old. If this is to go by, it's a empirical evidence, but we can count on that. Then I was starting to look at more recent evidence of what is a lifespan, and I stumbled upon a McKinsey study where they followed 1,008 firms globally over 4 decades, again from 60s to 2000. And out of that, 160 companies were still in operation after 4 decades. This is a McKinsey study which came out in 2000. And pretty much, again, the percentage is about 16%. So the Fortune 500 list was 12%, but The McKinsey study was 16%. So pretty much that's the average we are looking at for firms in 1960s to 2000. Typically, these global examples can be sometimes a little misleading. So I was trying to look at some Indian examples, and if the Indian study or Indian data points on this. One of the sources, or 2-3 sources rather, pointed to the fact that right now, companies, and I'm not talking of firms, NGOs and all that, company-wise, there are right now about ballpark 36 companies which are 100 years old and more in Indian context. So in this last 100 years, probably we don't have data for all the years, but lakhs and lakhs of companies have got registered, but only 36 companies seem to be still surviving and continuing business. And a recent study by Indira Gandhi Developmental Research Center, who tracked registered firms, so firms who registered in 1981, there was a few thousand firms which registered there. At the end of 20 years, at the end of 2 decades, only 45% of them were still in operation. The rest have all closed down. So when I'm talking of firms, I'm also talking of the brands of those firms. So pretty much 55% of firms in this study between 1981 to 2011 have closed down in 20 years' time. Then there are a lot of other data points which float around, which ballpark kind of tells us that a life of a brand in the current ecosystem is about 15 to 30 years. And a lot of pundits predict that as we go up more and more into the startup economy, the life of a brand probably will be about 0 to 15 years. I mean, 0 is probably an exaggeration, but maybe 1 or 2 years to 15 years. And that is a huge intrigue to me, because with all the established practices and the best of professionals running these companies from all over the world, from the best of institutes, yet the lifespan of brands are so limited. And that's, I think if any of you ever want to pursue a PhD, I would urge you to probably, look at this as a doctoral thesis. Maybe there is a lot of meat in this subject. While preparing for this, I was very tempted to pursue this and figure out why this happened. But in this particular webinar, given the time-bound constraint that I have, probably what I'll try and share with you are my thoughts on why this is happening and what we can do. So please try and understand, these are personal thoughts. These are not validated per se, apart from some examples that are floating around in the ecosystem. But it's worth probably debating, and in your classrooms, you can take this exercise forward as you go along. But before I delve into, why this is happening and what are some of the examples around it and what is to be learned out of them, I think it's important that you and I align on what we understand as brand equity, and so on and so forth. I know you all come from very strong theoretical backgrounds. I was telling Dr. Bhattacharya, I've been a student a long time ago, so my theoretical constructs are a bit rusty. But just to align so that we are in the same page about the understanding on what brands are and where, and what context I'm referring to brand management. I just quickly start with a model which I think is a reasonably good model to understand the brand and consumer relation as it operates in the world. It's called the Keller's brand equity model. Some of you may have read or come across it. Kevin Keller is a management scientist on Tuck Business School who came out with this brand equity model, which is almost a guiding light for us practicing managers who look at building brand and consumer relationship. But those of you who are not fond of management jargons or who don't like marketing jargons, for you, I can simplify it. Think of it as a dating model. If any of you have ever dated in your life or have tried to express your interest in a loved one, this is the model that you follow. And we as brand managers also follow the same when we try to build a, let's say, relationship with consumers with our brands. And at the base of this model is salience, right? So salience is all about identity. It's a question of identity. Who are you? So just imagine you trying to impress somebody. The first question that will come to that person's mind is, who are you? So there has to be a name, the way you look, the way you are packaged. Same with a brand, right? So who are you? That's the question you need to answer. And the next level, when you get into that, is meaning. So what are you? So one is to say, and this is where you come across features, attributes, benefits. So in case of individuals, it's about, okay, what do you do? Are you a student? Are you working? Where are you working? What do you do? What are your likes, dislikes? So if you're in a dating situation, that's the question you need to answer. If you're in a corporate brand situation, you're trying to answer, what does the brand do in terms of performance? And basis that, there is an imagery that's created. So you may think this person is very smart, or good looking or intelligent. Similarly, you may think this brand is really useful, convenient, very compelling in a day-to-day life kind of a situation. So that's the question you're trying to answer in the second level of this pyramid. And in the third level, you're not doing much actually. The brand is not doing much, but the consumer is evolving feelings, judgments and feelings about you. So what about you? He's trying to answer this question in his mind as to what about this brand? I know who the brand is. I know what the brand is, but what about the brand? Do I think it's a good brand? Is a bad brand? Do I think it's a good person in a dating situation or a bad person? Am I feeling anything about this person or am I feeling anything about the brand? And that's where you tend to gravitate in the third level of this pyramid, which is all about response. And if you are able to surpass this level with a favorable response, then you're talking of brand resonance and you're talking of a relationship. So if you have been able to resonate with a brand or resonate with a person, you're actually keen on building a relationship with that brand or person. And that relationship, depending on how the relevance plays out over a period of time, will be a relationship in perpetuity or a relationship for some years, and after which you may like to part ways. But the strength of the resonance will to some extent give you the initial impetus about how long the brand life will be with that particular consumer. And that is the context in which we'll be having the discussion today, is all about resonance. And we will be assuming that brands are starting from the point of resonance. So they are starting with the expectation of a healthy, long life, but then what goes wrong is what we'll try and understand. Also important to understand in this model is there are two pillars. Actually, if you see, there is the pyramid is broken into half from the second stage, because there are two lines which are followed. One is a functional line and one is an emotional line. The right-hand side is all about emotional line. So imagery, feelings, so these are all emotional. Whereas these are all actually performance attributes. So these are functional. What the product does, how the product is behaving, the judgment is very objective. It has nothing to do with emotions. So remember that there are two tracks that the brand follow, and often each of the track or both of the track can get damaged, derailing the relationship in a very big way. Moving on to what we understand as brand, again, there's an inside in and an inside out and an outside in perspective, if I may put it that way. So on one hand, there is a brand which is talking about, which the organization is making. And what is the organization putting in that brand? It is putting in content, which is often denoted as a product. It is putting in a purpose. The organization or the brand may have a purpose for which it's been launched. And there is a technology backing it, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's IT, whatever be the technology behind the brand. And the brand, however, is made a brand basis the consumer experience. So again and again, I'm reinforcing this point that the resonance and the consumer experience is actually resonance is a byproduct of the consumer experience, is what is making the brand. And hence the brand life or the lack of it will be determined here and not here, because you've already launched it. What happens in this play will going to determine the life. Now, just like, if you nowadays have a fever or a sore throat and you run and you get a COVID test and you try and figure out, whether you have COVID or you don't have COVID. Before we get into and delve into brand life and the factors affecting it, how do you kind of try and understand that your life is in danger? Or let's put it that way, that your life is getting affected. What would be the matrix to kind of help you understand that your brand life is in question? And it's a simple 2x2 matrix that I present to you. It's pure common sense, but just denoted in a matrix format. And I call it a red flag indicator matrix, where on one axis you have your brand sales or brand size, and it can be declining or growing over a period of time. And on the other hand, you have a market size, which is growing, the market in which your brand belongs. So if I represent a newspaper, then the newspaper category is the market, not television. But if I represent a television channel, then the television category is a market. So the category market size is the other matrix, which is growing or declining. It's a no-brainer that the red zone is where your brand sales or brand size is declining and the market is also declining. Now, if you're seeing data over the last 3, 4, 5 years where your CAGR of the market is declining, going down, the compounded annual growth is going down, and you're seeing your own sales CAGR is also going down, it's a minus, or out of 3 out of 5 years, in the last 3 out of 5 years, it's minus, the red flag should be up on the desk. There's something which you need to do here. It's almost like an ICU case. You need to put it in an ICU and do something about it to revitalize. Otherwise, you'll be dead sooner or later. Sooner rather later, I would put it. Then there is another zone, which is what I call a yellow zone, which is the market size is growing, but your brand size is declining. So the market is growing, but you're declining. This, in a way, is a concern zone, but the concern is not for the product category. The concern is probably you're not doing something right. It's time to go back to the Keller's model and check where in those stages of pyramid are you going wrong, that you're unable to build the resonance, which will help you drive the market or grow with the market. You are declining, but market is growing means there's something probably wrong in your internal mix. Probably there can be other factors which you need to reinvestigate and fix it and ensure that you can take and you can kind of capitalize the market opportunities that are there. So it's a yellow zone, but pretty much I would say a concern zone which you need to look at from an internal point of view. There is another yellow zone, and that yellow zone is when your brand is growing and your market is declining. So your own brand is growing. So you're in an actually very happy state as an organizational manager. You're very happy. You're seeing year-on-year growth in sales, profitability, but the market in which you operate is actually going down. And often this catches people off guard. And this is a worrying zone. It's not concern, but it's a worrying zone. Worrying because you often tend to be in a very, I would say, in a comfort zone, in a happy zone, because you are not affected. And you think, okay, the other players are doing a bad job. But what is actually happening is the market is gradually eroding, and sooner or later, there may not be a market for you to operate on, and you will be the largest player in a no market situation. And this is something you must keep I would say your guard should be up, your eyes and ears should be open to figure out if there are some fundamental changes that are happening to the category. Otherwise, your brand will be dead. Soon, again, I would say here, not sooner, maybe a little while from sooner, but your brand will be dead because the market itself is disappearing in a very big way. And of course, there is one zone in any matrix, which is always the happy matrix, which is the green zone, which is to say your market is growing and your brand size is growing. And again, I'm telling you, this is a trap zone, because in a short term or a near term, it's a very happy situation. Market growing, your brand is growing, there's really nothing to worry. And there is nothing to worry, actually. You should capitalize and you must optimize the brand performance. You must maximize your profit when you're in that particular zone. But if you are a good marketer, if you are a good brand manager, then you will start thinking that if this is such a lucrative and a good zone, sooner or later, I will face disruption. And hence, should I disrupt myself or should I allow someone else to come and disrupt me? If you're a smart marketer in today's time, you will disrupt yourself. Else somebody else will come and disrupt you and go, and you will have no clue what happened. Suddenly from a green, you slip to a red zone or you slip to a yellow zone, and you will be left wondering that, what went wrong, and it was such a great brand and it just closed down. And more often than not, the brand deaths that happen, that we see, whether it's the Fortune 500 list or the studies that they're showing, were brands which were in the green zone or in this yellow zone. And they were very happy, complacent. There's a term they call it a success syndrome, organizational success syndrome. It's a kind of organizational inertia, or call it a success inertia, which kind of lulls you into complacence, saying, things are good, I don't really need to worry. And I must not do anything which will so-called cannibalize me. Let me continue and maximize the profit. And that's where you often get caught off guard and caught trapped, and you're soon out of business. And I'll come back to the presentation, but it's important to probably share at this stage a few examples of what I'm talking about. And this was the theoretical background of why I'm saying what I'm saying. And I'll take some examples. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, the question which I would like to put is, in the class, when we teach this, we say brand autopsy, what
Okay.
you are doing.
Okay, oh great.
Similar to this, the way you're putting it.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Dr. Bhattacharya. I think I like the way you continue with the medical analogy. I like the autopsy word very much. So so call it a brand autopsy. If you can, it's a great term, I would say. It is something like that. But let me start with the good examples. It's always good to, in this current time, there's too much of tragic story. So let's start with the good story. I think one brand which you and I use very, very actively nowadays is a brand called Netflix. I think in the last 1 year, you would have seen this brand really grow and has become the most valuable brand ever, in fact, in the last 1 year, internationally. Those of you who followed the story of Netflix back in, I think, 2002 when they launched, this gentleman called Reed Hastings, fresh out of college, it was a startup. And they started with the business of DVD rental. Many of you may not be able to relate, but in our childhood also, We used to often go to a local neighborhood VCR shop and rent a video and a VCR and come to home and play the video. We used to call them video libraries, and it used to be the same in US. So they had DVDs, we had VCR. So there was a DVD rental shop, and there were two players. Blockbuster was the largest player in US for DVD rental, and Netflix started off as the number 2 brand. But Reed Hastings was a visionary, and he realized that this market is sooner or later going to shift. And the shift he saw was moving from a DVD rental, where people used to walk into a store and rent a DVD and give it back after 7 days, to a mail order. Mail order is a very big business in US. To a mail order rental. So where people will order on mail rather, from home, DVD will be given to their house and they will watch and they'll return it back. So he wanted to get into the mail order rental business. And also at that point of time in US, the streaming business started. So video streaming and net streaming started. And he thought that also along with it, I want to start the net streaming business, whatever be the low market, but he felt both of these will grow. And the irony is, he didn't have the resources to invest in any of them. So he went to the Blockbuster CEO and said, like, you and I both are in this business, but I see a disruption coming. And why don't we join hands? You buy 49% of my company. And with that money, I will invest in mail order and streaming business. You continue with your DVD rentals because they were the number 1 and the biggest at that point of time. However, if the disruption comes together, we'll be in a great position as and when the market evolves. The Blockbuster CEO rebuffed and laughed at him and said, like, mail order will never take off. And streaming is a non-starter whatsoever. I am not interested in wasting my money in all these businesses. Sorry, thank you, but I have to refuse the offer. He walked out, he went to a few friends and relatives and VCs raised money, and he invested in both. 10 years down the line, what was the story? Blockbusters filed for bankruptcy, and Netflix is what it is today. Now, the point is the moral of the story is, he could have continued to be fighting for a strong number 2 position or a strong number 1 position. But the uniqueness of this guy, and that's what makes a visionary leader different from the other, is Reed Hastings very, very consciously decided to disrupt his own business, because he knew that if he doesn't do it, tomorrow somebody else will, and he will be fending to this thing. And it takes a lot of guts. I can tell you as a manager, it takes a lot of gut to disrupt my own business. I face it in my print industry, in my newspaper industry all the time, because we don't want to do anything which will, kind of disrupt my cash cow. But the point is, others are not waiting. In a startup economy, people are actually waiting for opportunities, and they see industries which are doing very well, and they come up with a solution in today's day and time to go and disrupt your business and take away the shit. Reed Hastings was able to do that, and hence Netflix is what it is. And then he built the business on what is called a network effect. And that's something, again, very, very important in today's day and time. He realized that, buying content which is already available outside in the market is nothing great. What people want to come and see in streaming is original content. And this whole concept of Netflix originals came in. And today, if you see, when you go into Netflix, those of you who use it, you are more probably tempted to see Netflix original movie than a movie which has been released by some studio somewhere 10 years back. You probably have already seen it. And the whole game is now in original content. So therein lies one story of Netflix. The other, of course, very favorite and famous example now is Amazon. All of us are probably using it in some way or the other. But how did it start off? It started off as the world's largest book seller, e-book seller. Jeff Bezos went around and found that, he wanted to buy a book, he had to go to a store, buy, and after time the titles were not there. There was a whole lot of, issues around that. So he wanted to create an online marketplace where people will place their order. He will source it from various publishers and mail it back to them, courier it to them, let's put it that way. Again, the model clicked beautifully, and he positioned it as world's largest bookseller. And the volume grew so much that he thought that, I need to invest in a warehouse, because he was not able to work in a just-in-time concept where the bookseller will send a copy and he will courier. Initially, he was working in that format. But then he started investing in warehouse because the orders were many. So the books were coming, he was storing and then sending. Then one day he realized that I have so much of warehouse space, and I'm not utilizing all of it. Then why can't I get other like-minded partners to come in and join me, like toys, like merchandise items, like small stationery items. Let them also come into this platform, and I will help them to store their stuff in my warehouse. I will make money out of my warehouse space, and I will also piggyback on the same delivery system and make money. And that's how the others started coming. Over a period of time, that thing grew, and he realized that, it is not aggregation, but logistics is his business. And hence he expanded on logistics in a very big way. He invested in software in a very big way. And gradually, and a whole lot of things he did, that's a full 2-hour webinar it will take. But eventually he realized that he has developed such great sophisticated IT systems and server system that he moved. One of Amazon's most successful and lucrative business now is web-based services or cloud computing. Now he's now got into cloud computing, and they are one of the leaders in cloud computing in the world with Amazon Web Service. So just see how he started with a brand scope, and then he saw adjacent opportunities. He moved into adjacencies, as we call them. He started building those adjacencies and expanded the brand scope and constantly kept the brand refresh under the Amazon brand. And now he's gone into groceries, and we know everything, pretty much everything. Amazon Prime, they're all like huge adjacencies, each of which he got into and made a business out of that. And by doing that, he got different customers to come into the Amazon umbrella, and again build a network effect where a person may have come in for books, ended up buying toys or grocery, or somebody came in for groceries and ended up buying something else. And that's called network effect. And he built a network effect. And again, the most valuable brand probably in the world today is Amazon. And recently he is now moving into, again, content sourcing by buying through MGM because of Prime. Now, there are two great examples on that. On the other side, if you think of people who really bungled it in a way, and who had fantastic products, and the innovation of the century when we were growing up, what we were told was Walkman. Sony Walkman was one of those innovations of the century where people wanted music on the go, and they wanted the music to come, to carry their portable music kind of a thing. They came up with an idea, but then Apple happened, iPod happened, and then iPhone happened. And that's another story where iPhone almost cannibalized iPod. So iPhone disrupted iPod. But in the process, Walkman went out of business because somewhere Sony also had mobile phones by then. But it's just that they didn't want to cannibalize the Walkman business by, coming up with an iPod or a Sony phone enabled music, because they thought the Walkman music business needs to be protected. But somebody else came and disrupted, and today that business doesn't exist anymore. Kodak, Polaroid, they were the pioneers in digital photography system. But Kodak was stubborn about not allowing digital photography to bloom because they felt their films business will suffer. Today, Kodak is nowhere. But look at Fuji Films, who was there with Kodak. Fuji Films was quick to realize that this thing will disrupt. So what they did was they used their knowledge on surface chemistry, which was used for digital photography. And they took it to other industries like LCD panel. They took it to cosmetics. They took it to pharmaceuticals. And today, Fuji Films is 10 times the size of Kodak that it ever was. So it's again, quick to spot disruptions, quick to spot adjacencies, take your core competencies to adjacencies and build businesses around that. A more closer to home example, maybe Maruti Suzuki, great brand, has been straddling the automobile market for long. But look at it, how they have missed the SUV market. Somewhere they've always kind of focused on a small car, mid-sized car. And now India is moving into an SUV market, which has been taken by Hyundai, Kia, Renault, everybody. Maruti just doesn't have an offering there. They're struggling with one Brezza and they're unable to bring anything. And that's the market which is growing at the fastest pace, I would say. And they are probably again heading towards a bit of a disaster if they're unable to. They have tried something with a Nexa kind of a thing, but Nexa, they tried to make it a premium segment. But you're selling more or less similar car with a different brand name under Nexa. It doesn't give you that premium feel. And it's a bit of a jury is still out on the Nexa experience, I would say. But definitely on the SUV experience, they have been beaten hollow and square by all the other competitors. So I'm saying again, they're great companies because they are lulled by the complacency of doing very well. So they are exploiting their own business, but they are missing out on exploring the adjacencies and exploring the new businesses that are there, the opportunities that are there to keep the brand alive and keep the brand long. And hence, I would like to introduce here the concept of this exploit and explore. And I think today, going forward, the life of a brand will be determined on a concept called ambidexterity. Ambidexterity, in Bengali, we call it Shobboshachi, which is somebody who's able to use both his hands equally well. So, it's basically ambidexterity means a company must have the ability to exploit the current scope and at the same time continuously explore the new opportunities that are around. And the word we use here is adjacency, the adjacent opportunities that are around. And if you're able to marry both of them together, then the life of a brand can actually exist in perpetuity. And I'll just quickly go back to my presentation on this one, because to introduce this concept that I was talking about. I think this is, to my mind, the most critical aspect to extending a brand life to whatever time we want to, which is exploit the success of a current brand, existing brand, and use your current capabilities or acquire new ones to explore the adjacencies. And again, a great example out here, unfortunately, these are all in the digital world, is Facebook and Google. Just look at Facebook, again, fantastic concept, built on a network effect. We all have friends and groups in Facebook, and hence, right now it's a daunting task for you to think to go out of Facebook and join another social media stream and start all over again. So that's the network effect. Because of the network you have, you're bound to that particular platform. But they were quick to see that, WhatsApp can become a big threat to them. They were quick to see Instagram can become a big threat to them. And hence Facebook moved very quickly to acquire both of them, so that they can build the network even further and interlink it with Facebook, so that they don't become substitutes to Facebook, which they had the possibility of becoming, but they become complements to Facebook, and their business keeps going. And Facebook brand is more alive and more vibrant because of the integration it has had with WhatsApp and Instagram. And Google did the same with YouTube, because they saw that Google was very good with textual search, but the whole video search thing was moving into YouTube, and they quickly moved to acquire that, so that both with text and video, audio and video, they are able to straddle the two. And the next big thing that all of them are moving, including Amazon, is moving into is audio, because now people are realizing that audio is becoming the next big thing in the next 10 years, and everybody is putting capabilities in acquiring audio properties over a period of time. But they're classic examples of how we're both exploiting and exploring in order to keep the brand alive. And we all know this graph. I think as management students, we live and die with this graph, which is the product lifecycle graph. But where does exploit and explore fit in? So before you're launching the product, you're definitely in an exploratory stage. You're exploring at the developmental stage. And once you launch and you start growing, you build network effect, that's where you're exploiting them. So that's where you should do everything to, as I say, optimize the brand performance, maximize the profit. And as you do that, and the brand is reaching towards a growth maturity inflection point, you need to start exploiting and exploring. And if you're unable to do that, then this graph will actually go down the decline the way it is supposed to. But if you're able to explore well, then probably from this inflection point, a new S-curve will start, and your brand life will start getting extended. So that's where the concept of exploit and explore fit in. And hence, just coming back to media, since I represent the media and the ABP group, back in the early 2000s, we realized very quickly, we were primarily a print media group, and we had newspapers in regional language and Bengali and English. But we realized that TV is going to be the next big disruption, and we needed to move in. And not all the time do you need to, start something of your own. So we realized that, we don't have time to start something on our own and establish. So at that point of time, we tied up with Star News, and they had a news channel, and we bought a stake in the Star News, and we became a partner to Star News. At that point of time, we were a minority partner. Sorry, we were a majority partner, because FDI laws didn't allow more than 26% investment in foreign investment. So we took the majority share, and we built our capabilities in news with Star News over a longer period of time. And then about 10 years later, Star News wanted to exit news business. They were interested only in general entertainment, and we acquired the whole company. But because we did what we did, we were able to insulate the print news business with the television business, which has become almost like I would say bread and butter for the group now as we go ahead with ABP News or ABP Anando. These are channels, and then we have moved into Gujarati space with ABP Ashmita. We moved to Marathi space with ABP Majha, and recently to South with ABP Nadu. Now, all these kind of explorations that we did was simply to cement and insulate the print business that we have. We realized that audio may become very big. In 2007, we launched a radio station because we knew that point of time radio was very small. It was just all India radio business. But we knew over a period of time, radio will become big. Radio started becoming big, but then it got stagnated. But now audio is becoming the next big thing. And the audio is just an extension of radio. So again, we are pretty well placed to straddle that kind of a thing. And about 5 years back, we realized that the digital wave is coming and it will really, sweep us away. So we started investing in that digital thing, and we were just about in place before the pandemic started, though we are not yet at the top of our game right now, but we are somewhere there. And this pandemic really helped us, ride the wave, the digital wave of news in the last 1 year. And they have done extremely well, that business, both in terms of profitability as well as in terms of reach. And again, I would say in a very small way, in a local example of ABP Group, I can tell you that that's how we are following this whole concept of exploit and explore. And while we do that, our still bread and butter remains the print business, because that still contributes to more than 50% of our revenue. And we continue to nurture that. Thankfully, in India, there is still a long runway for print because the literacy rates are still low and people still grow. People still like the habit of reading, at least 35 years and above. And we feel there is still a 10 to 15-year runway on print. And the reason why we say that New York Times, even after doing everything, they're the most successful newspaper group and digital newspaper in the world. Even today, 50% of New York Times revenue comes from print and 50% comes from digital. So even in a market like US, the best of class example, still a 50-50 ratio. So yes, we will continue to exploit whatever juice is there in print. But having said that, we have seeded these businesses under the exploration thing. And there are many more that we are seeding, which will see the light of day in the next few months or maybe a couple of years. And we intend to continue to explore so that, our mission is to live the next 100 years also and keep the brand alive as we go forward. So while we do that, this is how we plan. So there are 3 horizons on which we plan. One is the core business, which I said is the print, and to some extent the television now, which is always there in our horizon 1. So it's here and now. We need to plan for this. Then we move into the growth business. So there are other businesses which are there, like ABP Weddings, like radio, like digital. These are growth businesses for us. And while we are doing that, we are planning the horizon for that. And as we go up these horizons, remember, if you look at the graph, the uncertainty goes up because you really don't know what is there in future. The future is unpredictable. It's almost like whether you're investing in equity or you're investing in debentures. So equity is a high risk investment. So as you go up the horizon, it's higher risk, but higher gain. There can be higher failure also, but if it succeeds, the potential is far higher. So while we are planning on that. And then there are a whole set of almost incubation businesses, which we are working in the group right now, which we want to incubate as we go along as Horizon 3 businesses. And that will see the light of day, some in 6 months, some in 1 year, some in 2 years, depending on which stage they are, because we want to keep growing on that front also. And as a management team, our review takes place on these because the matrices for review are very different. Core businesses more on sales, profitability. Growth businesses is on near-term profitability, near-term growth. And exploratory businesses are all about potential. So you really don't know what profitability, what sales you'll have, but you're talking of potential and what market you're in and how can you win in that market. And that's broadly the context in which we play. So I would pretty much finish my talk with the 5 takeaways, 6 takeaways rather, the 5 takeaways and 1 guiding principle, if I may call it that way, which I want probably you to remember and deliberate on in your class discussions or in your projects, wherever you get an opportunity. There's 1, build relevance. A lot of companies build engagement, but then forget to build relevance. So the initial engagement, Keller's model, you build that. But after that, keep on revisiting whether your engagement remains relevant. Remember, in our personal life also, the relationships which thrive and survive are relationships where both parties make an attempt to keep it fresh and keep it relevant. Similarly, nothing different in a brand-consumer relationship. The consumer will move on. His or her taste will change, his or her lifestyle will change. So that person will keep on refreshing her life or his life. Is your brand also refreshing along with the consumer journey? In that case, the relevance will be maintained and your brand will thrive. If not, your brand will die an early death. The second point, of course, is exploit the brand scope. Whatever the purpose with which the brand has come into play, you must exploit the scope. So remember, exploit, exploit, exploit. When there is hay, make hay when the sun shines. So exploit the brand as when it's thriving very well in the market. While you're doing that, if you really want to expand the life of your brand and prevent competitive threat, then try and create a network effect. The more people, the network you can create who participate in your brand journey, the better it will be for the brand and the less vulnerable it will be to threats that are operating in the marketplace. And definitely, this is the most difficult bit, but try and do it. Disrupt yourself before someone else does. if you don't do it, disrupt, create another line of business, this cannibalization is a myth. It's in your mind. A lot of us debate this in the boardroom. If I do this, will it cannibalize my print? These discussions I've seen. Should we do digital? Most print publishers in the country, whether it's the Hindu, the Times of India, Indian Express, ABP, everybody went through this. If we do digital, people stop reading newspapers, they go into digital, will our business survive? And if I don't do it, tomorrow a daily hunt, and exactly that's what happened, a daily hunt will come and do it. Some other guy now, Twitter is doing InShots and Google is doing news showcase. Somebody else will do it. You do it before somebody else do it. That's the best way to do it, because that way the money will still be in your company and in your organization, not with somebody else. Explore adjacencies. While you're doing all this, look at what are the adjacencies that your brand allows you to go into that full steam. Out of 10 cases, maybe you'll fail in 8, but the 2 that will succeed will be fantastic. And if you don't have the capability to go, acquire, buy. That's where the M&A thing, and that's why you see so much of consolidation, so much of buying and mergers are happening over a period of time, because people are quickly wanting to acquire. Nobody has the time to build capabilities in the long run. And the last guiding principle, it's a little offbeat from everything that I said, is something you remember when you are brand managers or you're leading an organization, that no matter what you do, the only way you're going to do well is by doing good. If your brand purpose is not in its place, if you're not doing something which is good for the society, no matter what strategies you play, the brand will not do well. And recently you've read an article with a leaked report about Nestle saying 60% of their portfolio is unhealthy. It's internal evaluation driven. Pepsi has done it long time back. And Indira Nui was in the forefront of that movement, where she wanted to move away from Pepsi being just a cola brand to Pepsi being a healthy brand for products that you use in your life. And she very consciously vacated the cola war with Coca-Cola to say that, Pepsi should stand for something good and bigger in a consumer's life than just being a cola, which in all practical purposes is not good for you, no matter how much you love cola. So at the end, this is a guiding principle. Whatever the top 5 things I've said, all that will come into play. A brand will survive. And the brands that I showed you at the first slide, and the brands which come into your mind as great brands, somewhere or the other, when you look at the case studies, you will see that they are doing well because they have done good. And if you've not done that, evil is the purpose of is in your heart, your brand will not do it. So with that, I will probably end, and I'll probably look at some questions if you are interested in that.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mukherjee. It was really wonderful and enriching. It reminded me, when I take this paper in my class, 2 things which we normally say, diversification at some point of time. When you say this exploitation, when it reaches a level, right, the zenith part, then it starts, when it starts declining, you say we diversify, right?
Yeah.
Now that diversification can be either concentric or, it might be, congruent, right?
Yeah.
Either way, right? Now that has been seen, in some of the cases like, ambassador, which is very important.
Yeah.
We have seen that, right? Or say standard Fiat, standard 10, PAL, particularly Fiat, right? Now, we would ask the people to answer, participants to ask us questions, but before that, let us go for a short break wherein a video will be placed. Mr. Mitro, a video will be played by Mr. Mitro. Mr. Mitro, can you please come in?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, we will go for a short break for 5
Yeah,
minutes.
sure. Why not? Why not? Why not?
Please.
Okay, great. So I'm sure everybody here is experiencing a very, very engrossing, educating, enlightening, and a very compelling session by Mr. Dhruva Mukherjee. And let me also tell you, Mr. Mukherjee, that we as Calcuttans and Bengalis are extremely proud of ABP as a brand. And perhaps one of the most proudest moments of our lives have been when ABP stood out for so many nominations and so many, and we have seen it diversifying in our own eyes. And we are extremely proud of this. And we are extremely proud and privileged to have you also. I'm also sure that, thank you. So I'm also sure everyone here would also want to know the man behind this webinar. I would want to introduce Mr. Mukherjee formally now. So Mr. Dhruva Mukherjee joined ABP in 1997. and he's currently the Chief Executive Officer of the organization. He joined as a management trainee, and during his career in AVP spanning over 2 decades, he has handled responsibilities in brand management, audience development, advertisement, sales, and production functions before taking over as the CEO. Born and brought up in Calcutta and a die-hard Calcuttan at heart, like many of us here, he is a BCom honors from St. Xavier's College, Calcutta, MBA from the ISWBM under Calcutta University, and an alumnus of London School of Economics and Political Science. He has also graduated from the Senior Executive Leadership Program of the Harvard Business School. Travel, food, and sports are some of the things that excites him beyond his interest areas in work, and also I'm sure fine arts and culture as well. Being in AVP, you cannot evade that. So I welcome you once again, and thank you also once again for this. We will have a small little video to be played before everyone here, and I would request Mr. Sunil to take this over for about maybe 3-4 minutes. Thank you.
Selling is your essence. Then you are welcome to Calcutta Business School. Center of Excellence. Centered on excellence.
Our trustees had a vision to set up a business school which would cater to the graduate students and also to working managers to fulfill their aspirations. As a result, our emphasis is on curriculum, on students' welfare, on placement, and also on different types of incubation centers to hone the skills.
Business School opens the door to an excellent tomorrow.
While selecting a B school, curriculum, knowledge of ability, excellent infrastructure, good placement, overall personality development, Calcutta Business School has it all.
We welcome you all to this beautiful campus of Calcutta Business School. Calcutta Business School is all about a place where dreams are fulfilled. We have a very, very strong value system. As a group, we have 10,000 students and over 500 faculty and staff members. Our curriculum is all about being learner-centric, where each way, the learner moves ahead on their own. There is experiential learning, transformation, and they are all employment ready because there is an industry connect.
The campus is thus a perfect example where technology and nature meet to educate and develop the next generation of managers, leaders, and entrepreneurs.
Results speak volumes. Students are carefully groomed before they go for interviews, resulting in a track record of 100% placement across 35 sectors and 40 varied functional roles. All students are absorbed as management trainees and are confirmed in the management cadre. Some also go abroad for higher studies. We are proud to place our students in reputed companies in India and abroad, like Merksline, McLeod Russell, Ever Ready, PricewaterhouseCoopers, HDFC Bank, KPMG, and many more.
May I request Ms. Sidra Hussain to please mute her mic. Yes, Dr. Bhattacharya, back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mitra. Thank you, Mr. Mukherjee. Once again, let us join after the break. Well, we have some questions from our students who have written in the chat box.
Okay, I'll just go.
I'm just reading the first question to you.
Okay.
First question comes from one of our students, Manush Gop.
Okay.
He says, sir, this is thank you for the amazing session. Did you face any hurdle in the last 1 year to maintain the brand value? what are the strategies you have taken to protect your brand?
Yeah, right. Thank you, Manush. I mean, very relevant question. I think there's hardly a company in the world who have not faced any hurdle in the last 1 year. It took all of us off guard. I mean, there may be companies who've done exceedingly well in the last 1 year. That's a different issue because they saw the opportunities in the crisis. But the first 2 months, we were all caught off guard. And for us, as I said, our print business is the core of the business. And remember, it started off as a health crisis. So more than brand value, it almost assaulted the brand, because when it starts off as a health crisis, the first priority for you is to then secure the health of your employees. And for us, the journalists who were out on the field trying to gather news, they were very, very vulnerable and susceptible to the disease. So we really needed to first take a whole lot of action to ensure that they are safeguarded, whether in terms of mask sanitizers, face shield. It's when you go out for news gathering, physical distancing becomes an almost impossibility. But trying to still ensure that they follow certain safety protocols and norms, because unless that content comes, we don't have a product, and unless the content is there, there is no product and there is no sale. Second, the biggest problem we faced was on the supply chain disruption. Initially, when people went into lockdown, everybody had their own interpretation of enforcing the lockdown. So police was on one direction, administration, government administration was another way, and so on and so forth. And you all know about the whole migrant labor crisis and all that. So yes, 2 weeks to 3 weeks in Bengal, thankfully, we were quick to recover. And it's not a political statement, but in 2 to 3 weeks, the government got their act together in terms of getting the lockdown guidelines in place. So we had to ensure that our newspaper vendors, who come and pick up the copy from the morning centers, they're able to do that and carry it to home. Otherwise, because they were initially not allowed to do so by the police, and there were a lot of almost hand fights going around. Unfortunately, vendors wanting to come and police stopping them. But we quickly, with the help of government, got passes, etc. All that. Why I'm saying is, because one of the things we were very clear is we had to keep the newspaper distribution going, because newspaper is a habit-driven brand. If you get out of habit reading a newspaper, then getting back that habit becomes very difficult. So for us nationally, and definitely for us as a group in Bengal, our focus was to ensure that there is no disruption to newspaper supply. Because unlike in the West, people here are used to getting the newspaper at home. They don't step out to buy a newspaper from a cash stall, which is what happens in the West. Home delivery system is not that strong. As a result of which, the pandemic has really impacted brand and brand values for newspaper groups across the world in the West, because people were not allowed to step out of their home, and hence buying a newspaper was out of question. But in India, and definitely in Bengal and Kerala, which has the highest news reading habits, newspaper reading habits, both the governments were very, very cooperative. So within 7 to 8 days, the vendors were given passes. They were allowed to come. They were able to pick up, and they were able to think. Also, what worked for us is in Bengal, most of the vendors stay in close proximity to the distribution centers. Unlike in a Bombay or a Delhi, where they had to take a local train and come from the suburbs, most of them stay in the proximity, so they could cycle in, pick up the newspapers and go. But then again, there was this fear. We suddenly realized there was a huge cross-section of consumers who were afraid that the virus may get transmitted through newspaper, and they were stopping supply. So we had to really dig up a lot of research, reach out to World Health Organization and some vital research organizations in the US. And we figured out from the research that actually paper has the least surface transmission capability compared to any other surface which are there. And all those research data was compiled, testimonials were made, and we had to create a campaign during lockdown in television, over digital, etc., which talked about the generic safety of newspapers, because paper transmission is the lowest. Paper's capability to transmit is the lowest. Virus ability to stay on a paper is the lowest. And two, because the newspaper goes through a chemical process of printing, those chemicals the virus cannot survive after that chemical infusion. So both those things, but still the worry remained that if the hawker who's carrying, if he's infected, what happens? So we had to do a lot of hawker education campaign in terms of giving them masks, sanitizers, gloves, all those have to be distributed so that they follow the safety protocol. They also realize it's a question of their livelihood. So they got into that. And hence, within 2 weeks, we were back to about 80% of what we used to circulate before. And the 10% which we knew will never happen because institutions were closed. We sell a lot in institutions like hotels and educational institutions. So that part was closed. And 10% was people who are still, despite everything, were afraid to read. So that was gone. So 80% came back. So thankfully, that helped us to stabilize. And then come unlock from November, December, we were able to even grow back. And by the time, thanks to the election, which was one of the most volatile election ever in Bengal, we were able to grow our circulation back to almost 92%. We are still down by 8 to 10% because most institutions are barely open or closed. So that will take some time to come back. But yeah, we are back to about 85-80%. So yeah, it could have been a potentially fatal effect to the brand, but we were able to restrict the brand, kind of nurture the brand value by taking all these steps and ensuring that our newspaper supply and distribution doesn't get impacted.
Okay, Mr. Mukherjee, I would request you to kindly, keep your mic a little bit near to your.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. You should tell me. Okay.
Yeah, at times your voice is becoming.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. That's okay. It's okay.
No problem. Yeah.
The next question has been asked by one of our students, Sumita Sarkar. She is asking you, how do you measure the impact of a brand in a print media?
Okay.
And is it different from a digital media?
Yeah. No, largely it's not different. See, at the end, the impact of a print media brand twofold. Like in print media, we have two businesses. One is how many copies you sell. So for print media, it's one of the measurement metrics is reach. So how many copies we sell and how many people are reading. So they necessarily will not be the same figures. So for example, if you buy a newspaper in the house, the sale is 1. But if your house has 4 family members who are all reading the paper, then the readership is 4. So normally readership figure is higher than the circulation figure. And often if you go to a salon or you go to a restaurant, you pick up a newspaper, you may not be buying, but you're still reading. So there are 2 matrices that come out. One is the circulation data, the one is the readership data. So we measure the impact of a brand by the circulation they have and by the reach that they have. And the other is, of course, advertising. So because of the reach of the eyeballs, there are advertisers who advertise in your brand. And the measures that they do is, okay, if I place an ad, how many response come? So that is another measure, which is more of an advertising measure, which is there with the client. We often get access to that to understand, okay, from a particular ad, I've got 500 response or 400 response. That kind of gives you and for digital also is nothing different. Digital, right now, the measurement agency nationally is an agency called Comscore. Google Analytics is also there who gives some data. So there they measure on 2 fronts. One is page view. So once you go into, say, a newspaper site like, say, there are. Okay. No problem. Yeah. So there they say how many page views are happening. So if you open the front page, how many people have seen the front page? And then there is another measure, which is the unique users. So I may go into multiple pages and see it multiple times. So that will increase the page view. But I am only one person who's going into this. So there are 2 measures. One is the unique viewers and one is the PV. So UV and PV. These are the 2 measures which are there in digital. But broadly, it is all about reach and exposure for digital or as well as for print. And same for television also, or radio for that. It's always about reach and exposure. I can't hear you, Dr. Bhattacharya, you're on mute.
Am I audible now?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, as you said, that it is like that we measure, it's not quantifiable possibly, right? At many a time, right?
No, these are all quantifiable. They are absolute numbers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
These are absolute numbers, but these are measured as a sample survey and then extrapolated. You technically cannot do so. Yes, there is a bit of prediction in it, but there is a robust sample on which it is extrapolated to understand the reach.
Okay. Well, the next question has been asked by Pragya Devnath, wherein she is asking you, in this competitive market, what is your USP for you to be number one in Eastern India?
Yeah, for print newspapers, you can say, yeah, Eastern India, though in the digital thing now, the world is a universe for us. But, you know, our focus has always been to remain in East and Bengal, to be more specific, simply because that's a business philosophy with which we started. You know, it's pretty much like if you see New York Times or Washington Post, they are actually focused on a particular region. It's just that the content is widely appreciated, so it's read by people across the world, and digital is making it more easy to access those content. But we always wanted to be, for want of a better term, beast of the East. You know, so we wanted to be masters of the East. So we wanted to focus on one region rather than go across the nation. Our content is national and international in nature, but we wanted to cater to one region because we wanted to be an expert, subject matter expert of this particular region. So the reason why Telegraph could, let's say, as a newspaper, withstand the competition from a national brand like Times of India, or before that Hindustan Times, and even before that Asian Age, these are all national brands which came into play, of which Asian Age and Hindustan Times have now vacated the market, but Times of India is still there. Simply because, you know, in fact, one of our tagline for the metro section says, no one knows the city better. If you are a domain expert of a particular, so you know the mindset, the ethos, you know, and as Chandrajit added to my introduction by saying that maybe I like the culture and the culture of the state and the place also. So similarly, you know the mindset and the ethos and the culture of the thing so well that you're able to probably present news which will be engaging and relevant, if I may put it, for the consumer, which an outsider will find a little difficult to come and internalize because they don't have it. Now, if I go to Bombay, I will struggle. Times of India will do it far better in Bombay because they originate from that place. They know that city in and out. And we will struggle. We'll probably be a number 2 or a number 3 there, like Hindustan Times is in Bombay. But definitely in Bengal, our USP is we know the state very well. We know Eastern India very well. And the way we are able to represent news of this state and what is important for this region, others will find it difficult. And that core competency is our USP.
So, I mean, I have got a question from my side.
Yeah.
Is it that what you said sometime back with the graph that, you know, to diversify, you have diversified into electronic media in different forms like ABP News and ABP Hindi and all that, right?
Yeah.
Was the objective that way to nationalize your brand, ABP brand, for that purpose, and have a market share of that which was already there in the market?
Yeah.
By CNBC or other news networks?
Yeah. So our news diversification, television diversification, as I said, started off by we partnering Star News. Now, Star News had a Hindi channel. So their English channel closed. They had a Hindi channel, English channel, which they ran with NDTV. But once the contract closed and that English channel stopped, so when we went in, we knew that, you know, nationally, English is not our forte, regional languages, because we have done very well in Bengali. If you look into the history of ABP, we had a strong Hindi publication also. You know, we had a Sunday and there was a Itwar and there was a Hindi presence. So we had some exposure to Hindi. And hence Hindi was a natural choice. And later on, if you see, our diversification have also been only in regional languages. Marathi, Tamil, Gujarati, and our first diversification was in Bengali, ABP Anand, and that still remains by far our most successful channel whatsoever. So yes, our diversification was based on that philosophy of regional languages. And in television, the entry barriers were lower for other regions, whereas for print, because it's black and white and printed, the entry barriers are far higher if you want to go into another city.
Was it, I mean, one of the students of us again, on this context. Hello, madam, you please mute yourself, madam, Mutaji, madam. Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Yeah. I'm saying it is, you know, is it because of this that ABPweddings.com was started since 2018?
Yeah.
Again,
no. ABP Weddings is, if I go back to my presentation, it's an exploration project. Okay. You know, I tell you why. Because for newspapers, one of the largest category of classified advertising is matrimony advertising. which is, we call it Patropatri in Bengali and matrimony in English. It is one of our largest categories. And if you remember, there was suddenly this huge assault which we saw coming, where classified was moving online. In the West, it started with Craigslist. Here, it was OLX and all these people who came in, and almost classified movement was moving towards online. And we knew that if we don't move in quickly, then sooner or later, this classified, of which matrimony is such a big part, will be attacked by online players, and we will be losing revenue in a big time. So ABP Weddings was actually, before that anyway, Jeevan Saathi Bharat Matrimony had already started. So ABP Wedding diversification was purely an exploration move to disrupt our own business, to say that, let us disrupt our own print classified, because if we don't disrupt our own business, the Bharat Matrimony or Jeevan Saathi will come and take it. So we did that. And thankfully now in Bengal, our ABP Weddings is the #1 site. And we have launched in Maharashtra also on the back of our ABP Majha there. And that's about 2 years old now, and that also is doing well. So that's a classic example of we trying to disrupt our own business by launching adjacency area or exploration project.
Okay. Again, one of the participants have raised a question, one of our students. Some of the brands are withered different sectors. What, according to you, are the reasons? You have explained in your presentation.
Yeah, I think that's more or less covered.
Right,
yeah,
already covered.
Yeah.
One participant again has asked a question. Do luxury brands automatically have a greater lifespan because of their immunity to seasonality and trends?
Do luxury brands, sorry?
Automatically have a greater lifespan because of their immunity to seasonality and trends?
No, not necessarily. I mean, luxury brands is just a segment, but the nature of the journey of the brand is same. And even recently, if you see, actually the brands which closed down, couldn't take the pandemic effect, most of them were luxury brands. Brook Brothers was a legendary brand in US with bespoke tailoring, and they closed down. Tiffany is up for sale, and LVMH and Tiffany dealers right now, a matter of controversy, because LVMH went into the deal before the pandemic, and now they're wanting to back out of the deal because they feel there is no value. Then if you see Macy, which is a very upmarket departmental store in West, they had to shut down their clothes, because pretty much it's not, because these luxury brands, again, if you see, the brand philosophy has been based on experience. So the person will visit the store. There's an exclusive setting. I mean, you go to Quest Mall and you say, how many people are in a Gucci or a Jimmy Choo store? There may be one or two. But that whole experience, those who want to buy and can afford, will go into the store, and that in-store experience is very important for luxury brand. You won't be buying a Gucci bag or a Jimmy Choo shoe over Amazon. I mean, not. I mean, you will not feel good about it to spend 2 lakhs on a pair of shoe and buying it over Amazon. So their whole thing was around in-store. Now the thing luxury brands have to do now in this post-pandemic new normal situation is to say that, how can they create a digital experience of buying which is equally upmarket? And that's something there. So I don't think they are immune to this. And if you just look up some literature in the last 1 or 2 years, you'll see they are the brands which are most hit, the luxury brand. And so, yeah, they're not immune, but they also need to follow the same journey plan.
Right. Then they will change themselves to a certain extent.
Yeah.
I think we have almost reached the fag end of the session.
Sure.
Thank you, Dr. Mukherjee, Mr. Mukherjee, for this, for giving the opportunity to question you on so many issues and discuss with you. I would leave this, Mr. Mistro, somebody's Mistro, I would request you to kindly take over and arrange for the vote of thanks. And I think there will be a short, Mr. Mistro?
Absolutely.
Before Chandrajit starts, let me give my vote of thanks. Big thank you, Dr. Bhattacharya, and once again, Ma'am Bhattacharya. I think the origin of this session starts with a small discussion I had with Ma'am Bhattacharya.
Thank you very much. I think it was very enlightening, and I learned. I have a lot of takeaways from here.
Thank you so much. And I must say, like Chandrajit, you said, I have to tell you that ever since I joined ABP, I know there is a lot of respect and admiration for Mr. S.K. Birla and the group and the work that they do. Yes. And this is one group which has always stood out because they have never looked at any initiative as a business, but they have, as I said, my last line, they've always believed in well by doing
Good work.
And and I was very happy to see the AV today. We see the Shaitan Foundation doing some amazing work. I have been privy to a few of their programs, and I think that actually sums up what I meant to say as a guiding principle for any group, that if you do well by doing good, you will have a more than 100 years existence. And your group is one of the, I think, living legends, living example of that. So extremely honored and proud to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. Sorry, Chandrajit, over to you.
Thank you so much. We are equally honored, and we don't have words to thank you, especially with the kind of facts, figures, and education that you provided today. It will be lingering on our minds for a very long time. And this is just not a customary thank you that I'm saying. We as students, still we consider ourselves as students, and as students of management and otherwise also, your presentation and those facts and figures that you shared with us will be etched in our mind for a very long time. I'm very sure all of us in Calcutta Business School would thank you. We will also have a very formal vote of thanks from one of our very proficient and a bright student and a senior student, Ms. Sumita Sarkar, whom I would request to come over and give the vote of thanks to our eminent and a very respectable speaker for the day.
Firstly, I would like to wish good evening to everybody, all the eminent people present here, the students and all the eminent personalities I have come across. So, it was a very wonderful session, having a theoretical knowledge or the other, how brand value is important for life. So I would just like to conclude by saying that since we have reached to the end of this webinar, which was very amazing, I take this opportunity to thank
Sumita, you keep
our honorable speaker,
Sumita,
Mr.
your voice is,
for gracing this event and making us.
Yeah, I think you keep your video off. Your voice is breaking. There's a bandwidth issue. Keep your video.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it'll improve the bandwidth. We can't hear you otherwise. Thank you.
Yeah. So now is it fine?
Yeah.
Yeah. So now is it fine, sir?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's fine.
So I would like now, as we have reached to the end of this amazing webinar today, I, Sumita Sarkar, heartiest thanks to our honorable guest, Calcutta Business School, for gracing this event and making us understand the different aspects of life of a brand and its importance. It is an honor to have you with us, sir. Thank you so much for enlightening us with such insightful thoughts. We did learn a lot from this session. I'm very sure it is going to help all of us in our future endeavors. I would also like to thank our principal, sir, Professor Suman Kumar Jha, for organizing this event, which would be very fruitful to us. I would like to extend my gratitude to our professors for all the support and guidance they have showered upon us. Dr. Pinaki Ranjan Bhattacharya for being the moderator of such wonderful event and for giving us this opportunity to connect with such eminent speaker. Moreover, I would like to thank Shaitan Foundation, where CBS is a unit for providing us with opportunity and for always working for the betterment. Special thanks to the core committee members of Shaitan Foundation for always coming forward with interesting topics and dynamic speakers, which help us in growing in an effective and positive way. Sir, we look forward to keep learning from you in the near future with many more powerful sessions and on varied topics. Lastly, I would like to thank all the supporting staffs for bringing this program into fruitful shape and the viewers for their constant encouragement by viewing and appreciating the efforts. Also, I would like to wish everyone on behalf of Calcutta Business School that they should stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Sumita. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sumita ji.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Stay healthy. That's more important.
Yeah. I wish the same for all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.